All right, we're going to talk about the energy-producing organelles. All of life requires a constant input of energy in order to maintain the structure of cells. Chloroplasts and mitochondria are the two eukaryotic membrane-bound organelles that specialize in converting energy from the environment into a usable form. Animal cells contain only mitochondria, whereas plant cells contain both chloroplasts and mitochondria. So we're going to start off by talking about chloroplasts. Now, the interesting thing about chloroplasts is that they're ultimately going to be responsible for turning solar energy into chemical energy. They convert solar energy into carbohydrates. Then mitochondria are going to be used for turning that chemical energy into usable energy for the cells, and then converting it back into carbon dioxide and water, a lower chemical energy. Chloroplasts are going to use that carbon dioxide and water plus solar energy to make carbohydrates. Mitochondria are going to turn those carbohydrates into usable ATP and carbon dioxide and water. Chloroplasts are going to pick that up, turn solar energy into chemical carbohydrates, and so on and so forth. And so that's the completed cycle. Now, I would like to point out, many students tell me that plants have chloroplasts and animal cells have mitochondria. This is not wrong, but this is not the complete truth. Yes, plants have chloroplasts and animal cells have mitochondria, but plants also have mitochondria. Plants are not running around converting solar energy into glucose just for the fun of it. Plants are converting solar energy into glucose because they have mitochondria that need to convert that glucose into ATP. It's kind of like how bees make honey. Yes, bees make honey, but they're not making it for humans. They're making it for themselves. Now, granted, they produce way more than they could ever need. Plants produce way more glucose than they could ever use, and so that's why we ultimately eat them and use that stored chemical glucose for our own purposes. But they're not making it just for the sake of making it. They're making it because they need that glucose themselves, and they have mitochondria that they need to keep supplied with that high level of glucose. So we're going to start off, like I said, talking about chloroplasts. Chloroplasts are going to be the site of photosynthesis. Photosynthesis is going to be the process of capturing light energy to help drive cellular machinery. That process of photosynthesis is going to synthesize carbohydrates from carbon dioxide and water. It's going to make food using carbon dioxide as its only carbon source. So it's fantastic at sucking carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. Energy-poor compounds are going to be converted to energy-rich compounds. Solar energy plus carbon dioxide plus water is going to equal carbohydrates and oxygen. Now, we'll have a whole chapter devoted to this, so don't worry about molecular formulas or chemical reactions just yet. But just know that we're going to eventually talk about the process of photosynthesis in depth. This is going to be done through the use of a pigment known as chlorophyll. Chlorophyll is going to be found in the thylakoid membrane. An enzyme that synthesizes carbohydrates is going to be located in the fluid stroma. Only plants, algae, and certain bacteria are capable of conducting photosynthesis. This is not something that every living organism can do, only those that contain chloroplasts. So here is going to be sort of the structure of a chloroplast. A chloroplast is going to be bound by a double membrane on the outside. What we have on the inside are going to be inner membranes infolded to form thylakoids stacked to form grana. Now, I know that this is a lot of talk about the structure of a chloroplast. We will go into greater detail at a later time, but I want to just point out that this is what the inside of a chloroplast looks like. We've got this series of flattened stacks. But one thing that we have a lot of is we have a lot of membrane. This is membrane that's been folded back and forth and stacked on top of each other. Here's the interesting thing. Photosynthesis takes place in chemical reactions that occur out here in the stroma, or the jelly-like fluid out here, and then also on the membranes of these thylakoid stacks. So what we need for high level of efficiency is we need a really, really high surface area to volume ratio. And we do that, remember, we can increase our surface area to volume ratio by decreasing size. That's what we have done. We have taken this chloroplast and we have decreased the size, and we have made millions of itty-bitty tiny little chloroplast structures, these grana that are stacked on top of each other that have lots and lots of surface area and volume that's going to allow for a very efficient photosynthesis. And like I said, we're going to talk about that process a little bit later on, but I just want to mention that this shape, this structure is designed for maximum surface area to volume ratio. It's going to be suspended in a semi-fluid called the stroma. The chlorophyll and other pigments that capture the solar energy are going to be found on the thylakoid membrane. Like I said, efficient photosynthesis is going to require a lot of interaction between the thylakoid membrane and the stroma. The mitochondria is interesting as well. The mitochondria is going to be responsible for turning that glucose into ATP, turning that chemical energy into that short-term burst of energy that we may need to drive different cellular processes. The mitochondria is going to be found in nearly all eukaryotic cells. Plants and animals are going to have that mitochondria. It's going to be much smaller than the chloroplast, and its numbers are going to vary from cell to cell depending on that cell's metabolic needs. Some key features: it does contain a double membrane, just like our thylakoid membrane, or just like our chloroplast. The interesting thing is, here is our outside membrane, nice and smooth. The inner membrane found on the inside of the mitochondria is actually going to be folded back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. What we have is lots and lots of surface area between the inside of the jelly-like fluid of the mitochondria. The jelly-like fluid inside of the mitochondria is called the matrix. The matrix is going to have lots and lots of exposure to these inner folds. These are called the cristae. These infolds are going to be responsible for the conversion of glucose into ATP. We're going to have a whole chapter devoted to cellular respiration. That's the process of converting glucose into ATP. And we're going to see that efficient conversion of ATP happens in both the cristae and the matrix. It's going to happen on the membrane and inside the matrix. So in order to improve its efficiency, we want to increase the surface area to volume ratio. We want to have, it's kind of like we originally talked about prokaryotic cells versus eukaryotic cells. We compared them to a Reese's peanut butter cup. Reese's peanut butter cup that's going to have high surface area to volume ratio. Now here's the thing though, if we wanted to increase the surface area to volume ratio, but we don't want to decrease the size, what could we do to put more exposure of chocolate to peanut butter in that large Reese's peanut butter cup? We could make like a Kit Kat, and we could layer chocolate all throughout that peanut butter cup. We could put in stripes of chocolate all throughout, and then we would increase the ratio of chocolate to peanut butter. We're going to do the same thing with our mitochondria. We're going to layer this inner membrane back and forth to form those cristae, and we're going to increase that surface area to volume ratio. Now, you may have heard that the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. It is. It's going to be the power plant. It's where we're going to turn chemical energy into ATP. Just like a power plant can turn coal or raw chemical energy into physical energy or electrical energy that can then be transmitted and used. So it's going to be the site of cellular respiration. Cellular respiration is just going to be the conversion of chemical energy, glucose, into ATP. And that's it for our discussion of the energy-related organelle.